Hi folks, welcome back to We the People. I'm Dave Gallus, your host, and today is a very special day for me. I want to talk about a very dear friend, Pastor Herb Pinney, who has been a mentor, a man that I love, and he passed on, so it's going to be a hard shoe to fill, I'm sure, for anybody. But before we get there, I want to talk to you about something very important. How many people have athlete's foot? Well, I know a lot myself. I almost wish I had athlete's foot so I could go take this trial. There's a trial being conducted by 3A Research, and you go there, they have creams, they test you, they have a cream that they test to see if it can cure or help reduce the inflammation and pain with athlete's foot. And it only takes 3 visits. Over a 6-week period, you'll only be there every other week. They test you. They give you $225 to compensate you for your time and your travel expenses. So it's a great opportunity for anybody. And how many people do we know in our own family that have athlete's foot? And this can really be a big game changer. So you've got nothing to lose. I have family that I'm going to let them know about it. It's here in Las Cruces on Tell Shore, right near Spruce. You go in, they check you out. Absolutely great. I've been there. They treat you well. You will be compensated, and you can possibly have a lot of relief. And probably let you keep the cream after the trial. So anyway, really try it out, folks. It's 3A Research on Tell Shore here in Las Cruces, and check it out. So my main subject is Pastor Herb Pinney. Now I met Herb and I always had more respect than to call him Herb. It was always Pastor Herb, and he'd always tell me, call me Herb. But anyway, I respected this man so much. Now, you have to picture a fellow that almost looks like a homeless person. He's got one bad leg because he had to have a hip removed, and his foot is turned in, so it almost looks like, well, he's dragging his foot all the time. And I, being a man of the water, a sailor, I think of it as dragging your anchor. But even at that, his hands are gnarled with arthritis. He's got one bad eye that looks like I don't know, it doesn't look healthy at all. And when he looks at you, he's got an askewed look, and he's looking over his glasses, and you can see that one poor eye. And hearing the story of his life, he grew up in the Midwest, I think it was. He went here to New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology in New Mexico. He's a geologist. He's a scientist. Yet he's a man of God. And I know sometimes people don't think those two jive, but they do. And Herb had a way of explaining where science is God and God is science. And the two do come together, and it makes sense. I would just love to be around him more than I was, but I was around him a lot as it was. And I would tease him, I'd say, I forgot to mention that he only had like 3 teeth in his head. And he's so brilliant with his mind, sharp, acute mind, and yet it was very hard for him to speak. One time when he was in the hospital, they gave him speech therapy, and I said, whoa, Pastor Herb, I said, I can understand you better. He said, yeah, they're giving me therapy. I said, keep it up. And I said, you think we can get some dental work for you? I said, because I don't want to miss any of the pearls that come out of your mouth. Well, he laughed at that. But his best way to convey information, I think, is in writing. So I met Herb about 5 years ago, I think it was, and he was the pastor of the Agape Church over on 1600, I think it is, 1400 North 6th Street. Or 1400 6th Street, and it's very close to Picacho and Valley. If you're going north on Valley, off of Picacho, if you're going north past Picacho on Valley, you make a right turn at the Pickwick, and that's Wilson, and then as you come to the first intersection, just look left, and that's the Agape Church. It's also called the Dream Center, Mike Teus's Dream Center. They do a lot of activities there. They help local kids with all kinds of activities. Mike's a great guy, very generous with his time, his money, and Pastor Herb had his church within that Dream Center. So I guess it was actually 3 years ago. We're in our 3rd year of publication of this publication called Issachar. Now, Issachar is a publication that's it's Christian-based, but it's a practical publication. And I think, some people say, oh, I should be a preacher. Well, if I am ever going to be a preacher, I want to be a practical preacher that brings the Bible into focus as to how you can solve problems of the modern day. Absolutely. You can live a good life if you follow the teachings of the Bible. Certainly the Ten Commandments, too. So anyway, this publication, some time ago, after knowing Herb, Pastor Herb, there were three other principals. Daniel Black, who is actually one of the editors, along with Pastor Herb, of the publication. And Daniel, we're still trying to get him to write for it. He's a very good critic, and he's a very dear friend. I consider him my little brother. And then you have Chuck Wendler, who is a former principal of the schools in Las Cruces, Doñana County. And then we have Dr. David Tofstad, who's a scientist. And Dave Tofstad, Chuck Wendler, myself, Herb Pinney, we all write to the publication of Issachar. And Daniel is, he's actually a publisher, editor. He produces the publication on print. So we're at a standstill now because Herb passed away probably 2 weeks ago. And Herb was the driving force. He was the driving force in so much in this community. But not only in this community, he also had a mission school in Guatemala called the I always mess this up. It's the New Iberian Mission Association. He runs this school in Guatemala that teaches children, third world country, teaches children Christian faith and also academics. And they put out some really tremendous kids. So he's got the church here. He's doing that in Guatemala at a distance, but his family is running the operation. And hearing the story of his life is like, you know, I don't know if you read the Bible, but if you read Job, you'll get a good idea of what Herb Pinney's been through. Herb lost 4 of his children and his wife. And Herb was 87 years old. Just the wealth of experience and knowledge that he has was something that I am dearly going to miss because I can't go to him and talk to him now. However, I have 3 years of the publication of Issachar that we all put out together, and I have Herb's words in these publications. And he wrote more than any of us in the publication, because sometimes if we didn't have the time to submit 2 submissions for the publication each month, Herb would fill in. So he probably did at least 3 Words of Wisdom publications in our monthly Issachar. And to all those that get Issachar now or would like to get Issachar, please contact me. My producer will put my information up on the screen, and you can contact me. I can give you information. I can get you past publications. I can sign you up for a new publication. But again, we're not sure what we're going to do as far as continuing the publication of Issachar, because without Herb, it's going to be tough. Maybe he'll visit us spiritually and help us out there. I'm sure he will, if he can. So he was a mining engineer, graduated, and all the time he'd been a strong Christian believer. So he was a pastor, and he tells me stories about he was an interdiction on people that were in drug crisis, family crisis. He had a gun pointed at his head a couple times, trying to intervene between a family faction. It sounded like something like out of the Hatfields and McCoys. But Herb was always there. And I regret to say that he called me just before he went into the hospital for the last time. I was back east in the Philadelphia area. And he called me and he sounded desperate. He said, "Dave, I need help. I'm in trouble." I said, "Herb, Pastor Herb, I can't help you right now." I said, "I'm 2,000 miles away." But I gave him the name of Chuck Wendler and I forget who else I gave him information so that he could contact them. And in turn, they had helped him. But I wished I was there and that I could have helped, but I couldn't be there at that time. So this was the last time he was in the hospital. And what he was fighting with was an infection that was in his body, I think he said, for 30 years. And they were trying a new revolutionary treatment system, which was intravenous injections to cure this infection that he couldn't shake. And let me backtrack a little bit. Before I left for going back east, for maybe a month or so, he had been asking me to help transport him to the church where he could give a service. but he was immobile. He had a walker, and he didn't have a cane. He had to have a walker. But like I said, he was dragging his one leg behind him all the time, dragging his anchor. So he was saying, Dave, I'm going to have my leg taken off, because they couldn't cure the infection that was basically in his leg. And I says, well, are you going to get a prosthetic device? He said, no, too expensive. Now he's putting out, I don't know how much money he was spending or generating for the school in Guatemala. I don't know how much he was spending to keep the church afloat here. I understand that he was a big supporter of Mike Tejas' Dream Center because of the income that was produced by the church being there. All this money that was around Pastor Herb Pinney did not go to Pastor Herb Pinney. I mean, when he was able to drive, he was driving this ratty little, I don't know what year it was, older than any vehicle I had, broken window that was sealed up with plastic. His dress was, it certainly wasn't stylish, I'll say that. He looked like a homeless person. But he never gave up. He always was at it. I went to visit him the last time that I saw him. I went to visit him at his apartment, and here he is with his gnarled hands. He's hitting the typewriter with two of the 10 arthritic fingers that he had, and this is how he would write. But you talk about prolific writer, putting out publications all the time, and really stuff that hits you right in the heart. And it makes you challenge yourself and makes you question, am I doing the right thing? Sometimes it was hard to hear, and even now, in reading his works, I'm thinking, well, I don't tithe like I should. Tithing is 10% of your income that goes to a charity, the church, or a charity of your choice. I'm tithing at about 5%, so I'm halfway there, and I need to go farther, which I will, thanks to Herb's push even from the grave. But so I go over to Herb's, and he's Pastor Herb's, and he's hitting the typewriter. He's at it. And we sat down and we had a talk. And I was going through some issues about, I felt like I was overextending with my time. I was involved in politics. I was involved with family matters. I was involved with obligations that I had around my house. I wanted to make sure that I spent time with the love of my life, my wife and partner for life, Bernadette. I didn't know how to cover all those bases. And as usual, Herb gave me some real practical advice on just how to do that. And it's worked out. It always does whenever I go to Herb. Now I think I'm going to have to go back through these, 3 years of publications and anything else that I can find that Herb wrote, because everything he wrote hits you right in the heart. And for me, if I was wise enough to understand what he was telling me, it makes a difference. So I'm over there, I go to his house. His little Hispanic lady that was helping him had another little ratty car that he had this set up to where he could get in this car. Now, I went over in my pickup truck, but the pickup truck would have been too difficult for him to maneuver and get in. He had this whole thing planned out. So I went over there, but this is after we had our talk where he straightened me out as far as time management. So we have to get him in his wheelchair inside, and then we wheel him out to the car. We get his walker set up by the passenger side door. I have to push his seat, the passenger side seat, all the way back. He gets on his walker. You have to lift him, and that's why he wanted me, because you had to have somebody lift him. And little Genevieve, she wasn't strong enough to lift him by herself. So I get behind his belt, and I start lifting, and I rip a hole through his pants. And his pants weren't the best in the world. So I said, I'm sorry, and I got another bite. I ripped another hole through his pants, and I said, oh, geez. So he's got 2 big holes in the back of his pants now where I'm trying to lift in his belt and his pants at the same time. So, okay, I finally get him up onto the walker, and it's a balancing act because he's only got one leg that he has to pivot on. So he pivots on, and he's on the walker, and he wiggles it around to where he gets in position. Then we ease him down under the seat. Then he says, now you have to recline the seat. So he had this all planned out, how to recline the seat. So we recline the seat. We get him. I have to have the seat all the way back and reclined. We get him in the car. I have to lift his leg that's heavily bandaged because of the infection. And I don't want to hurt him, but I have to bend his leg and get his leg inside. And I get him in the car. We close the door. I follow him over to the church. And as we're walking through the churches, it's like a labyrinth going through the hallways and all, I said, Pastor Herb, I said, you're going to have your leg taken off. And I could tell he's got a bad eye. I said, you need a patch. I said, you remind me of a modern-day pirate. So look, we're going to take a break. I'll tell you more about the modern-day pirate when we come back from this. Don't forget, 3A Research, Athlete's Foot, fully compensated, $225 for 3 visits. You can't go wrong. We'll be back in a minute.
Redness, burning, itchy feet. You may be suffering from athlete's foot and be eligible for a clinical trial. 3A Research is conducting a clinical trial of an investigational drug for treating athlete's foot. This is a 6-week study. We will compensate your time, travel, and reimbursement of up to $225. Contact our office, 3A Research with Michael Raucci.
Call our offices today for more information. Serving El Paso and now open in Las Cruces. I hope to see you soon.
Did you know children should have their first comprehensive eye exam at 6 months of age and every 1 to 2 years afterwards? Unfortunately, most children have not had an eye exam. While there are many reasons children haven't been to an eye doctor, the ability to pay for the exam is not one of them. Medicaid or most private insurances cover the cost of the exam and glasses. And if they don't, New Mexico Lion's Operation Kid Sight has funding available, so it's free for the family.
Hi, I'm Ray Bamberg with Here on Earth. I would like to invite you for a free hearing evaluation to our office. We've been here in southern New Mexico for 34 years helping people hear better.
Hi folks, welcome back to We the People. I'm Dave Gallus, your host, and we're talking about the life of a dear friend who passed away, Herb Pinney. Pastor Herb Pinney of the Agape Church here in Las Cruces. Also, the CFO and CEO of the Morning Glory. It's called the Iberian, doggone it, I always forget it. It's the New Iberian Mission Association, which is a Guatemalan school. He takes care of that as well. This guy was busy all the time. And he was a very prolific writer, many writings, and he would do it with 2 gnarled fingers that are arthritic, like the rest of his fingers, tapping away at the keyboard. But a dear friend, and I will miss him dearly. So anyway, I was telling you a story about how we got him to the church, and my last time spent with him, about 3 weeks ago, I guess it was. So we get him in this major operation to get him in the wheelchair, and I'm wheeling him into the church. And as we're going through, I said, Pastor Herb, you're going to have your leg removed, and you're not going to get a prosthetic device because it's too expensive. He never spent money on himself. His clothing, his car, nothing. I mean, his office, it was all went to the other people. Now, I'm sure he did a whole lot more than tithing, but, and that's something I have to work on, my tithing. I'm only at 5%. I need to get to 10%, at least. So anyway, we're wheeling through, and I said, Pastor Herb, I said, you know, you with one leg, you need an eye patch because you got a bad eye. You got 3 teeth in your head. You're about as grizzled as they come. I said, you remind me of one of my favorite movies. It was Robert Louis Stevenson wrote the story Treasure Island, and they made a movie out of it with Wallace Beery as Long John Silver. I wouldn't say a lovable pirate, but a pirate with a bit of a heart when it came to young Jim Hawkins, who was played by Jackie Cooper. But I can see Pastor Herb in that role with one leg. He's got a crutch under his arm, not a parrot on his shoulder, because in Herb's case it would be a dove, signifying Christ. And instead of a cutlass for a sword, he would have a crucifix, or he would have a cross, where he could do battle with the enemy, Satan. And I said to him, you remind me of a modern-day pirate for Christ. And I wrote a story about it. And during the time that it was supposed to be published in Issachar, not only was Pastor Herb in the hospital, but Daniel Black, our key everything, who runs the whole publication along with Herb, he broke his hip. So he's out of commission. So we went through a bit of a transition, and we only got, I guess, 2 publications out in 4 months, and I hope our readers understand, and I think they would, and our subscribers. And we're in a position where we're not quite sure how we're going to continue, if we're going to continue with Issachar. And like I said, I've got 3 years' worth of publications that Pastor Herb wrote a lot of the material for. I was one of the writers. Dr. Dave Tofstad, scientist, and Chuck Wendler, who is a former principal of a school in Doñana County. All good writers. His daughter, Linda Chavallo, I think it is. Linda Pinney Chavallo is also one of the writers. So my wife, Bernadette Dave Gallus, she's a writer. We're going to have to get everybody together to decide what we're going to do. And I don't think we're quite paid off on the machine that we use to print the material, but I'm sure God will give us direction, and hopefully Pastor Herb will have a little push there divinely to help us decide on what to do. We don't want to stop the publication. It's a great publication, and we welcome all kinds of writers to write to it. So anyway, we get Pastor Herb in the church, and I left him there, and he only had a small group of people at the church that I could see, but I think that was because of the COVID situation, where a lot of people weren't coming out. They were afraid, so they were trying to follow the guidelines, although I think it's an overreach of our government to do such a thing. Certainly to tell you, you have to be vaccinated, you can't go to church, you can't go to businesses, you can't be in close proximity to other people. I have my own views on that, and I think it's overreach. But anyway, I respect everybody that wants to protect themselves. Certainly, you want to protect yourselves. I do too, but I'm also against the vaccination. But that's each to each their own people to make their own decisions. So, but anyway, Herb Pinney was somebody that I admired. He would tell me stories about how he was a young boy, how he had to work hard, earned money through his own labor, where he was tithing when he was a teenager, putting 10% of his money that he made into the church, where he was a mining engineer and went to school for it, and he would challenge the professors of the time, the other scientists. He was a used car and new car salesman. I think, well, what didn't you do, Herb? And there wasn't much, but every time he spoke, it was just something that was just open your heart up. And you knew you were listening to somebody that was very wise, very honest, always honest. And the one day I said to him, I said, Pastor Herb, I said, can we get you some dental work? Because it's so hard to understand what you're saying sometimes, you know, your garbled speech, because you only have 3 teeth. And he said, no, he says, too expensive, so he wouldn't spend that. And I said, I don't want to miss any of the pearls that come out of your mouth. And he laughed. And then I said, geez, I'm sorry. Maybe that was kind of hurtful. I'm sorry I said that. He said, Dave, he said, don't worry about it. He said, only your friends tell you when your fly's down. Now, I don't want to run out of time before I read this prayer that he had at his bedstand, he told me, and he always read it before he went to bed. And it's called An Evening Prayer by C.M. Battersby. If I have wounded any soul today, if I have caused one foot to go astray, if I have walked in my own willful way, dear Lord, forgive. If I have uttered idle words or vain, if I have turned aside for want or pain, lest I offend some other through the strain, dear Lord, forgive. If I have been perverse or hard or cold, if I have longed for shelter in the fold, when thou hast given me some fort to hold, dear Lord, forgive. Forgive the sins I have confessed to thee. Forgive the secret sins I do not see. O guide me, love me, and my keeper be. Amen. This is on my bedstand now, and that's what I read. So I will miss Pastor Herb and dearly. And we are going to have a service at the Agape Church today, Saturday, November 13th at 2 o'clock. All are welcome to help celebrate the life of Pastor Herb Pinney. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stories told. And there's going to be food. I think I'm going to bring my famous black bean dip, which is spoken about in hushed and reverent tones. But please come to the Agape Church. It's 1400 6th Street. It's very near the Pickwick at Picacho and Valley and Wilson, which is just north of Picacho and Valley. So 1400 6th Street, 2 p.m. Saturday, November 13th. And folks, you'll have a good time. You'll hear a lot of good stories, and it should be a very happy gathering. Also, my producer put up there, I believe, the location or where you can reach the Agape Church, where you can reach the Iberian ministry down in Guatemala. You can call me if you have any questions, and I would be glad to answer anything, point you in the right direction. And if you get Issachar or you want Issachar, again, please call me, Dave Gallus, at 856-952-7343, and I'll be glad to set you up. So, folks, it's been a pleasure. I am going to dearly miss Pastor Herb Pinney. Hope you can make the service today at 2 o'clock. And I don't know what the story is going to be next week, but it'll be something very interesting. And don't forget, 3A research for Athlete's Foot, compensated $225 for your time. Only takes 3 visits. See you next week.